I've gotten to a place where it's like, I almost can't read profiles anymore of the 16 types. I read it and I go, yeah, that's one version of that type. Yes, you nailed it. You nailed one version of that type. I have sort of a different way of looking at type than I ever have in the past. It's coming from this idea of self-regulation. I suspect that type is a way for us to try to regulate the overwhelm that we're feeling all the time.
Welcome back to the Personality Hacker Podcast. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
So I was up at my parents' house this weekend. Well, I wasn't visiting my parents. My mom's out of town, but my dad was there. And so my dad and I got some time to hang out this weekend, which is really good, Antonia. He's in his 70s. Yeah. I'm not going to have it forever left with him. So we took some time, went to lunch a couple times this weekend, just me and him. It was really nice to spend some time with my father. And it really became apparent to me in some of our conversations. Yeah, I was just reflecting on some of my upbringing and some of the, the way that I had been raised. And we were just talking about family and just general things. And quietly to myself, as we're talking about all these different aspects of our family life and growing up, I was tuning into this idea of personality type and the different energies that personality types are tuned into and how basically that's the map of personality, right? Which is kind of what we pay attention to and what we're uncertain of in the world. And I was thinking this really applies to family systems as well. Like my entire family system, almost you could say has like a personality type to it, or like it's not a type, but it's sort of like the things that we would pay attention to as a family and the things that we wouldn't pay attention to as a family. Mm-hmm. And I thought more about that over the weekend. And I was thinking also about not only are there things that we wouldn't pay attention to, but life forces itself on you, right? Sometimes you have to, as a family system, pay attention to these things, even if your family's not into them, like they just come to you, like you have to tune into them or whatever. And I think that my family had a lot of rules when that would happen on how we would engage this type of material. So as an example, my family's all feelers. Like we all have feeling preferences. So thinking was something that wasn't necessarily the first place we would go when we're trying to like solve a problem, right? We're not like, let's sit down and logically think through this problem. We would say that's what we're doing, but as feelers, we're talking about our feelings and our motivations and the needs that we have and other people have, the desires we have, and we're framing it from a feeler standpoint. And so thinking would take a back seat. Anytime we had to do thinking, though, in a very thinking way, we'd have ways we'd go about it, like kind of a culture that would emerge about how we would approach it. Yeah. My family was very combative when we get into thinking. I was reflecting on that, talking to my dad. He loves debate. He loves to, even he's a feeler, but he loves debate. He loves to like debate out ideas and the conflict in information. When you married into the family, it's like, what are you guys doing? It's like a weird way of approaching information. You're not as combative with your information as we are.
There was a lot of combat in my family, but it was a different kind. There was like combat in your family felt like it was being used to understand the idea at all.
And it wasn't combat with each other mostly. Right. That's the big thing. It was like combat of the ideas themselves or the thoughts themselves, more about the person.
Right. Well, it was like, it was almost like mismatching. It was like a substitution for thought labor.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It's like, as opposed to like sitting there and doing your own thinking, it was like, well, let's just argue and see which thing comes out on top at the end.
And probably argue was what it looked like to other people. It was sort of like this combative nature of finding the best idea or thought. Yeah. It felt like we could be friends. Anytime there's hostility or combat, it's not really about you as a person. And we knew it about each other. Like me and my dad, when we would like talk through an idea. Right. It didn't feel personal. We'd never personally insult or attack or anything. It was genuinely like about the idea.
Well, and there were...
Or the thought itself.
Yeah, but I mean, I know how your dad debates because I've been enough Thanksgivings to know how, and he has ISFP preferences. What I have noticed is that what you're talking about is when there's not a lot of weight put on the idea. When there's not something, there's like personal stakes involved. Sure. If it's associated with a value of his, and he gets too close to something that doesn't align with his value, he does a lot of juking, which is a very, I mean, I've noticed this is like kind of a It's an all non-introverted thinking user tactic.
I do it too. I'm just better at it. I'm more subtle, but I do the same thing. I try to like it's positionally get away from the...
Yeah, you're trying to get out of this thing that you might have accidentally put yourself in, this corner you might have put yourself in. And so I know that I'm making a point because all of a sudden we're just not talking about that anymore.
Yeah.
All of a sudden we're like, well, but don't you think? And then now they don't call that moving the goalpost, but I think it's not moving the goalpost, is more like a juke. And so I've noticed that sort of debate is if there's no weight to the thought. If it doesn't, no personal weight to the thought.
Sure.
But if there's personal weight to it, then your family doesn't really talk about it.
Well, yeah. And this came up, I mean, my family's how they are. This actually came up in our dynamic in that we'll go into we work together. Mm-hmm. So we have to solve problems together and go get business ideas and think through things.
Yeah.
So I would enter, in the early days, I would call going into the war room. We're going to go into the war room and ideate and figure this out. And you were like, you stopped wanting to meet with me.
Yeah.
Because I would be so combative. It was almost like I was angry at you.
Yeah.
You would read it as like a personal attack or a personal issue. And I would be so frustrated. I was like, this isn't personal. I'm trying to combat the idea, but you would take it personally. I didn't mean it to be personal, but maybe I did. I didn't know, but it's just how I grew up. This is how we engage with material. This is what we did.
And what's interesting about that is usually we were ideating. So we weren't in thinking problem solving land. We were in intuitive what if land.
Yeah.
You have a far more assertive version of extroverted intuition than I do.
Yeah.
And so for you, it's like, it's about, and you're a social 6 in the Enneagram, and so there's a lot of mismatching energy going on. And so there was a lot of like sort of like battle it out for the best idea to come out on top. And I was more, but you were also raised in an introverted feeling, extroverted thinking household. And I was raised in an introverted thinking, extroverted feeling household.
Yeah.
And so things are a lot more cooperative as opposed to combative. You're not looking necessarily for the weaknesses and everything. You're looking for the strengths and things, which tends to be a little bit more of a TPFJ bias.
Yeah.
And my extroverted intuition is a lot more receptive than yours is. And so I listen to the idea and play around with it and throw a whole bunch of ideas out, but it's more like it's a gentler form. And so I'm looking for like a gentle cooperative context, and you were looking for an assertive war room context.
Yeah.
And eventually I was like, well, I'm not sure how to play in this, so I think I'm going to bounce. But to go back to the original point, I grew up in a different style of family.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that, and I'm talking a lot about this in a program that I'm teaching right now called Applied Cognitive Systems for people who've taken profiler training. This is one of the programs they can take after profiler training. And what we're doing right now is we're trying to figure out how as an individual, and I don't mean mine, Antonia Dodge, but like mine as in all the students in the class, how my functions evolved and developed over time, considering the environment and the context in which they were raised, and the messages that one got. Because not every person of the same type preferences is the same person, and obviously, right? And I have to say, I've gotten to a place where it's like I almost can't read profiles anymore of the 16 types, because I read it and I go, yeah, that's one version of that type. Yes, you nailed it. You nailed one version of that type.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get a good profile that takes into account all of the different modifiers that make us who we are, which is, again, we just recently did a series on why it's hard to find your type. That's one of the reasons why it's hard to find your type, because profiles of the 16 types are never sufficient, ever.
Well, this is why we started profile training, is every profile is personal.
Right, exactly.
I mean, at the end of the day, there's a pattern, but it is personal to you. And then discovering your best fit type and how you are that type is like extremely personal to you.
And we are the way we are, not just through nature, which I think cognitive function stack and preference is nature. I think we're pre-wired with our personality type or our type preferences. But a lot of how we show up is also nurture. And so you've got people of the same type growing up in all of these different contexts. And I think this idea of what your family thought were like rules of engagement, like what's tolerated and what's not tolerated in our house. Well, what are we allowed to do? Or if we're going to do this thing, what are the unspoken and sometimes directly spoken, but usually unspoken expectations of how we're going to show up with this energy?
Yeah.
And so in your family, you're talking about 100% of people are feelers. So how they show, like how their thinking function shows up is going to be pretty particular to a family of people who don't have any thinking preferences, right? Like if they're all feelers, that's gonna show up in a very different way than, say, my family, which was a little bit more of an even 50-50 split.
I'm not interested in talking about the emergent, though. Like you're talking more of an emergent. Like that's just how it showed up. I'm talking about like what were the rules of engagement around this energy in your household. And I'm going to posit to you listening or watching right now. There were rules around how you would engage with the 8 cognitive functions based on probably your parents' preferences or your caretaker preferences. Maybe yours were woven in there too, but your family system created rules of engagement around all of those energies showing up.
Yeah.
And we could just take it. I mean, I think on this episode, probably the best way to do it is just talk about it in the 4 slices. We could talk about sensing, feeling, thinking, and intuition, and we could just unpack. And then I'd love to hear people report back what their rules of engagement were for their family or their upbringing. Yeah,
and sort of model it. Because while you might not be interested, I don't know what you mean by you're not interested in the emergent, but I think I might have taken that differently than you intended.
Oh, I didn't mean to be hostile. No. See, I'm combative with information. This is my whole point. I'm combative with information. Well, right here.
What I mean is, yes, you are. That's
you're like, whoa, I feel like a little.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll take my ball and go home.
I didn't mean it to be combative.
Not interested in the emergent, Antonia.
This is how I was raised. I'm trying to tell you.
Well, I still am not sure what you mean by that, but I think when you are able to take each layer of this and go, what were the rules of engagement in my family, or what were the expectations, it makes it a lot easier to see why we show up the way that we do, because we were given parameters. Sure. And those parameters may have been on functions, like expectations of how we deal with all of this, that are things that are preferences of ours or things that aren't preferences of ours. And so when they aren't preferences of ours, that's almost just as important as if they are. Because, I mean, if the rule of engagement is that you don't do this thing and it's not your preference anyway, well, when are you ever going to do it? Yeah. You're just never going to do that. That's just not a thing that you do. And that might create this huge, sort of gaping hole of existence.
You have to do it, though. That's what I'm saying. There's moments that come into our lives where we have to engage with these things. Yeah. What was the family system or the framework of how you would engage with it when you had to? Yeah.
I think that's really important. I think it's a really interesting question. Yeah. And I think if a person does a little bit of digging into or remembering of what those expectations were for them, I think it helps us figure out why am I showing up the way that I am with my functions? Because I don't want to talk a lot about it because I'm writing a paper right now, and I have a bit of a sort of a different way of looking at type than I ever have in the past. And it's coming from this idea of self-regulation. We have, for the last year, talked a lot about self-regulation and seeing the functions of 4 different channels of them. But I'm starting to see the functions themselves as basically maybe the reason why we're pre-wired the way that we are is because we're always trying to regulate. Yeah. Like that's kind of the point. The point is that we're always trying to find strategies that will keep us from being overwhelmed by the overwhelming experience that is life. Like life is just overwhelming. I remember a long time ago, I think I've quoted this before, that when Mr. Rogers, which by the way, I don't know if anybody's noticed, but there's like a little Easter egg that Mr. Rogers, I've always said, is my animus. I don't know if that's true or not, but this is my little Mr. Rogers animus. little Mr. Rogers guy. Who's represented in the backdrop of our podcast. If you're watching the video, you'll see Mr. Rogers, my animus, back there. Because I suspected he had ISFJ preferences. I know a lot of people think he was an IFP, and that's fine. I don't care. But he showed up in a very gentle, introverted sensing and extroverted feeling way. So I'm like, all right, he's my animus. Anyway, I remember when they went before Congress to try to secure funding for PBS way back in, I want to say the 70s, maybe even, I don't think it was the 60s. I think it was the 70s. And Fred Rogers was talking about how concerned he was about children's programming, because I think he was talking a lot about cartoons, probably Warner Brothers cartoons at the time, or Tom and Jerry or whatever, where these little animals and creatures were beating the ever-loving hell out of each other, right? Yeah. And, in one scene...
Roadrunner cartoons.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Wile E. Coyote is being, exploded with, like an Acme... missile.
Dynamite.
And the next one, he's trying to strap on his skates so he can go get the Roadrunner. Anyway, which obviously I loved, right? I love those cartoons, but he said he was really concerned about the programming that children were watching, because he said the drama of childhood is enough.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a really interesting phrase, because like just learning how to tie your shoes, or maybe the first time you've ever taken a pop quiz, in the 3rd or 4th grade, and you didn't know that that was a thing, or there's like so many milestones that children have to do that are so overwhelming.
Yeah. And
I was sitting with that phrase as I was thinking about this idea of perhaps using, like, maybe the reason why we're wired the way we are is to give us almost like a little bit of a leg up on regulation, or like give us almost like a way to regulate portions of life's experiences, while at the same time remembering that there's a cost of specialization and we can't be masters at everything. But I was just like sitting with that idea that life is overwhelming no matter how good we think we're getting at it.
Yeah.
And it's like life is drama enough. Now, I think we watch these kinds of, like as children, we watch those kinds of cartoons because we don't understand the implications and it's funny. But we probably are also trying to get a little steam out for how hostile life is, and trying to sort of vicariously see it through a funny context.
Yeah.
But as adults, I think we're so attracted to drama because it's interesting and we get to vicariously live through other people's experiences. But I also think that like life is dramatic and life is overwhelming. And so I suspect that type is a way for us to try to regulate the overwhelm that we're feeling all the time. And so in family systems, the same thing is happening, only in like a little system, right? Like families are also trying to regulate the overwhelm of life, because if it's overwhelming to be a single person, it's even more overwhelming to be in charge of like these little dependents that are expecting you to get all their needs met. And then a relationship with another human being that is bringing all their baggage and you're bringing all your baggage. And now you have to somehow communicate every day how much you love and respect and honor this person, and you want to be a teammate, while the rest of life feels like it's just like beating the hell out of you, right? A la Tom and Jerry. And so I think these systems, these rules of engagement, are ways that our parents or our family system, whether it was by design or whether or not it was just, it emerged, even though you're not interested in the emergent, whatever that means. I think these things are ways for us to deal with overwhelm.
Yeah.
And so when we are able to sort of tune into the strategies that were given to us and try to kind of figure out, like, these were what were modeled for us, and then now life gets overwhelming. So what is my default? What am I going to run to when life gets overwhelming? Yeah. I'm going to run to these rules of engagement. I'm going to run to the things that were modeled for me, whether or not it's in my best interest.
Yeah. I would love to hear, you're watching or listening right now, do you have a sense of your, before we even go into the 4 areas that I want to go into, do you have a sense of the rules of engagement in your household, where there are certain areas, energies, maybe topics? I mean, topics are usually connected to an energy or something that just were like not allowed, or when they came into your world, you had to address them very carefully. Like they weren't, like you had a lot of rules around how this would be done, right? And families typically have certain energies just aren't present. Mm-hmm. And then when they are present, how did you respond to that as a family? Like how did the system you grew up in respond to it? I thought we could take this, but if you could leave a comment right now below this episode and tell me what you're speculating on right now, before we get into it, that'd be really interesting. Yeah. Get this conversation going. Let's start with the sensing, Antonia. So let's just go sensing, feeling, thinking, and intuition. What do you say?
Okay, sounds good.
All right, so I'm going to group 2 of the functions together. Extroverted sensing, introverted sensing. Just talk about sensing. These are 2 sides to the sensing energy field, if you will. Well,
technically there's one function with 2 attitudes.
That's right. An attitude means where it's pointed, introvert or extrovert.
Right.
And so we get those 2 cognitive functions. But let's talk about sensing.
Okay. So just to remind
go ahead.
The person listening.
Give us an update.
Yeah. What is sensing? Well, the sensing function is about experience. Yeah. It's about direct experience with life. And the introverted sensing direction is processing experience, whereas the extroverted sensing is engaging with or having rapport with your environment and interfacing with an experience. Yeah. And so I guess the question is, and of course, experience is anything that you're, like you can take in through your senses, which is why it's called a sensing function. And so most of the concrete things of life fall into this category. Yeah. Most of the things that we kind of have to sort of contend with and do and engage with, and there's a lot of material that fall under each of these functions.
Yeah.
But the directly knowable experiences, that's what falls under the sensing.
So growing up, the rules of engagement around sensing in my family was, if you are moving with me and we're in rapport with each other in movement, not like in relational rapport, but we're like moving and we're doing and we're active, almost anything you could say to me is, with respect, is forgiven, and we can be combative and you can give me your opinion, I give you my opinion. As long as we're in motion and we're trying to do something direct, we're getting into action. So it makes sense. My entire family has extroverted sensing or sensation as one of their first 4 functions. My brother has it as dominant. My dad has it as his co-pilot or his auxiliary. My mom has it as her inferior or 3-year-old. I'm the only one that doesn't have this function in my immediate family.
So what does that mean? As long as you're in motion, anything is forgivable?
Well, like when I moved away, I was working with my parents and I was very involved in their lives. I move away and I try to give advice, and now it's like not heard. Like, well, you're not here. You don't even live around here. Why would we listen? You're not even around. You're not present to the environment. You're not with us and moving and part of it. So the ethos is, and this is the default of my family, by the way. This was like, because I think every one of these, your family's probably, if you're listening or watching, you're going to probably have a default that comes up for you that's like where you go, where your family would go. And this was the default for mine.
What I heard you say is if you're in action, but actually what I'm hearing is like if you are present to the experiences that are happening.
Basically.
Right.
Usually that'd be action.
Right.
You're up on your feet actually doing activity.
Well, they run a youth camp.
Yeah, but it could be just being present to the situation or being attuned to what's going on, just with it, like with it, connected, communicating, all that.
So if you're a couple hours away and you're patterning things from a distance, that's not valid information, because how would you know? Yep. You're not there to see the day to day.
The rules of engagement are you're present and you're active, and then we can listen to it.
Okay.
And the same thing, that was just the way it was set up in my family. Now,
yeah.
I don't what was in yours, and as you're listening or watching right now, if you start to think like what was the rules of engagement around sensing in your family, I'd love to hear that in a moment. How would you say it for your family, Antonia?
Well, my family also had more extroverted sensing than introverted sensing. My sister and I were the only two that favored introverted sensing or memory. All the rest of my family are either NJs or SPs.
Yeah.
And so there was there wasn't as much of an expectation of presence, because there was a lot of introverted intuition, which is there was actually quite a bit of space held for patterning, but there was an expectation of we might have to move at any time.
Readiness.
That's right. We might have to move at any time, and so don't be sentimental about anything. I remember hearing for the first time that it changed between 3 and 7 times, but somebody told me that if you move 7 times, it's the equivalent to a house fire.
Yeah.
Like you lose so much of your stuff. And I remember my mom telling me that when I was a kid, because she's like, don't get too attached to anything, because you're probably not going to have it.
Yeah.
After we moved so many times. We did. I think I counted I went to, I don't know, 7 or 8 schools growing up or something. And so we were always moving, and that was a part of my family's ethos.
Yeah.
Was always be in motion in that way, always looking for new opportunities. So, so it's like, don't get too attached to anything, don't get too sentimental, and always be ready to move.
Yeah.
That was the expectation that was set. And as far as sensory things, I don't think anybody in my family overvalued sensing. There was no statement in my world of like, oh, you don't have this down. Well, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Right. Like that wasn't a challenge that I experienced, because I think it was, intuition was dominant in my family.
I think I had more introverted sensing because there was a sense of legacy and continuation on a through line and family history. And I don't think your family had a lot of that.
No, but I do look back and realize that they outsourced their introverted sensing a lot. I think that was one of the reasons why my family was so close to the religion that I grew up in.
That was their rules of engagement for that.
That was how they regulated their introverted sensing.
Connected to an outside institution.
And the institution was the regulator.
So you're looking at this through a frame like, how did your family regulate this energy in a way? And I think that's another way to kind of ask about it or think about it.
Yeah. And so because that's how they regulated it, that was the expectation. The expectation is that you maintain regulation with, like, say, extroverted sensing by being ready all the time, being ready to do a major move, a big, meaningful move, not ready on the moment to moment. And there was no real expectation that anybody would be, like, particularly, like, there was no physical acumen that was really required. I mean, my dad was he was quite athletic when he was young. He had ESTP preferences, but it was almost more like fun. He was still pretty studious, and so to him, athleticism was like how he blew off steam or something. So it was not really this big value. It was not like you have to go into sports or you have to, it's like, oh, you're just not paying attention. Like if we ran into stuff and got a bruise, it wasn't like, why can't you pay attention, or why aren't you? There was no judgment around not being high, like a high sensor.
Yeah, these rules of engagement are values around how we're going to engage with these. I think as we're talking about them, I'm realizing it's a deep valued sense, like in my family as well. And I'll ask you this, if you're listening or watching, what was your experience? What were the rules of engagement around sensing in your family? I'll just say one more story, and you can compare this to Antonia before we jump into the feeling realm. I was allowed to be sick as a kid. Like it was okay. I mean, clearly you're not in trouble if you're sick. And my mom was attentive. She has harmony, extroverted feeling, and she was very attentive. But it was kind of the ethos of the family was like, okay, get better as quick as you can though, because we've got stuff to do. Like you kind of need to get back up on your feet as soon as you can. We don't have a lot of time for you to be ill. And it's kind of a burden to the system. And so like, don't be faking it. You better be really sick, because if you're laying down and you're even able to be up at all, you should be up moving. Like that, it wasn't ever expressed that way, but it was just kind of the expectation. There was just so much to do, and we're moving so many, so fast. Yeah.
And I think the other expectation in your family is that that's how we build intimacy, by doing things together.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do activities together. We play games. Yeah. Or play, I don't know, like a quick game of wiffle ball or whatever.
So would you say sensing was default in your family as the default kind of deferent channel? It was definitely the default channel in my family.
Yeah, it was not default for my family.
More than anything else, I think it was the one that we. And so, if you listening or watching, was the sensing the default, or was this more of a down the line for you?
Well, the sensors were outnumbered by intuitives in my family by a 3-2. Yeah. Right. And so there was, it was considered, sensing was considered, I mean, I don't remember that being a big part of my story. Yeah. Type being a game changer for me, and learning I was an intuitive as a game changer, was not because of my family. I didn't feel like a black sheep in my family because of having intuition. That was way more about like societal expectations and things on the outside. But yeah, I know there were, sensing wasn't the default. I do think that there was a bit of downplaying of introverted sensing or memory. And there was like a little bit of like, because my sister favored introverted sensing or memory, there was like something kind of like different about her. Right. That was like off or weird or different, or which is really interesting, actually. my poor ESFJ sister, that she was like the weird one in the family. But other than that, yeah, no, I think that there was those were the expectations.
So let's talk about the rules of engagement around feeling. Right. I think this is also something that most families have some kind of a rule set around. Some people grow up in families that are very like feeling is not expressed. We are very cold and not cold like in a cold heart, like we're just we're calculated. We talk very calmly and clearly.
You can't stop using cold and calculated.
Well, that's because I'm a feeler. Of course I'm going to see it that way.
We're evil robots we're not really people.
Yeah, you're just like, you don't know how to like get down.
Yeah, no, it's actually more like we like to have equilibrium in the house. And so we don't want to have a lot of emotional spike points is usually what that kind of.
Yeah, and to me, it just doesn't make any sense. But I understand that's how a lot of people feel. So the other families are very fiery, like way fiery than mine. Maybe a family like an Italian family is like very expressive or something, right? So some people come from very expressive, emotionally expressed families, and I came from kind of a middle of the road one.
Yeah. Well, let's lay the track of feeling.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Please do.
So before we enter the, understand our relationship to feeling, just remember that the feeling function is there. I think the feeling functions are there to help humanize us. Yeah. And to determine how we're going to engage with ourselves and others in order to honor the human experience. So that's why values tend to emerge from feeling, because we're like, oh, we should be treating ourselves and each other in certain ways. Like let's treat ourselves in a way that respects our humanness and our humanity, and that we're living organic tissue. And so, like, let's have some honor for the fact that feelings are real and how we rub up against each other matters. And then there's so that's the feeling function. And then you go more towards the introverted feeling, which is more processing our own experience, sort of understanding what these experiences mean for us and processing our own emotions around them and feelings around them and trying to find things that are in alignment with the self. And then the extroverted version, that attitude is more like how we engage with each other on a relational level, and how we show honor to each other through the values of good etiquette or the values of staying in rapport and building trust. So those are what the feeling functions are. Yeah.
And so I'm sure that your family, if you're listening or watching right now, had some rules of engagement around this.
Well, and I will just say, even though, because of course, the first thing, whenever I talk about feeling in this way, people always are like, feelings aren't the same as emotions. And I'm like, you're right. The feeling functions aren't the same as emotions, but emotions are the most important piece of content for feeling. For the feeling functions, emotional impact is the language of the feeling functions. Because otherwise, what does it matter, right? It's like, what does it matter what we're doing if it doesn't carry any impact emotionally on us? So we shouldn't conflate the feeling functions with emotions, but emotions are very important in there.
And that could be confusing for somebody that's like, wait a minute, how's that not conflated? I'll just make a comment that it could be the motivation somebody's carrying. Mm-hmm. Could be part of their feelings, right? Mm-hmm. I would tune in to say, like, that's not emotions. You're motivated toward a value set. It's driving you to do something. That's coming from your feeling function, often introverted feeling, like a deep core value or some value you have. Not necessarily an emotion you're feeling in that moment. Well, no, you might have emotions around it.
An extroverted feeling sometimes looks really distant because it starts making decisions not based on one's own emotions, but other people's. And it can be in sort of not an emotionally flat place, but it's like, well, this is how we should be treating people. This is how society should run. And so it's, but how does one know unless somebody had like a negative emotional experience and now we go, oh, we shouldn't put people in that position. Yeah. So even though the feeling function should not be conflated with emotions, emotions are the language of the feeling functions. That's how they know where values should be living, is like, what's the impact on people? What's the impact on myself? What's the impact on other people? And so in a family system, there are almost always rules around this. Like just how much threshold do we have for feeling values, for emotional information? And like you said, some families have a huge bandwidth for it, right? Yeah. And so any emotion is welcome, right? Any emotional experience at any time is totally welcome, because especially if you have a family full of people who favor the feeling functions, they have a lot of bandwidth to carry that emotional information and understand what it means. If you're in a family that has a lot of thinking preferences, the bandwidth is going to be smaller. It's like, well, that's not the only information we look at. We also look at the thinking stuff. And so, in your family, you said there are a lot of families that have even more emotional content than yours, but even though you were in a family of 100% feelers. Yeah. So that's interesting.
Well, the rules of engagement were, as far as I can tell, I mean, these rules are often unspoken. It's not like you get sat down at the age of 12. It's like, okay, let me explain the rules of our family to you. You pick these up through osmosis and through observation and through experience.
And through getting slapped on the back of the head and stuff.
Yeah, or whatever. I didn't never get that happen, but yes, metaphorically speaking, yes.
Just bragging now.
So the rules of engagement in my household were extreme emotional expression is okay as long as it's serious and authentic. Like as long as it's like
real, whatever that means.
Like you can't just get up, like you didn't get a certain birthday gift or Christmas gift. You can't just express emotionally and be upset about that. That wouldn't be okay. But like if there's a big deal going on and you're authentically standing for it, you can be pretty impassioned in an impassioned way, and my family would hang with it. Like that was the rule of engagement. It was totally okay. Now my mom would be distressed about it because she has harmony. So
extroverted feeling,
really intense expression could make her go, I got to get out of the situation often. But mostly the family could hang in that really intense. So that was the rule of engagement. Yeah. But it wasn't really attuning to the needs of people around us. That wasn't part of the rules. Like that wasn't really what we're looking to do. My mom.
Yeah. Hence why when people get sick, hey, why are you sick? Get better immediately.
So that wasn't really part of it. But but yeah, what would you say? How would the feeling functions show up? What are the rules in your household?
Yeah. Well, unlike your family, because for feeling four feeling types in your family, 3 of them being FPs, meant that introverted feeling was going to definitely be the flavor of the, of the day for many days consecutive. Whereas my family had a 50-50 on thinking and feeling, but no introverted feeling, right? Like the only person who had, we've got like, it's disproportionately high TP and FJs in my family. And so that's the dominant polarity. So even though it feels like it's a 50-50, the only introverted feeling that was in my family represented was my brother, and it's his 3-year-old or inferior function as an ENTJ. So anytime introverted feeling popped up, and I would say there was a lot of repressed emotions. There was a lot of emotional explosions, right? Because nobody was really processing their emotional content, nor was it ever, encouraged. In fact, I remember basically my parents on certain, each of them individually at some point was like, yeah, I don't do growth work. That's not what I do. And it's like, oh, okay. All right. I'll just have to, God will have to fix me at some point in the future. And it's like, all right. So there was not a lot of working on your own emotional experience and processing what's going on for you. So all of the feeling rules of engagement were all extroverted feeling. And they were things like, don't embarrass mom. That was a big one, right? Make sure that we're not embarrassing. Make sure that our status, our social credit is high. It wasn't be inauthentic, but it was like show up at your best to represent the family. Yeah. There was a willingness to be gilded. Does that make sense? Like it's okay if people see us as shinier than we actually are. But there was also, I would say, like in my family, you talk about being sick. If somebody was sick in my family, everybody stopped and attended to them. Like they would get like the honored part of the couch, and they would be able to play couch commando with even if you were like a 7-year-old, if you were sick, you got control of the remote control, which is actually a pretty huge privilege, I would say. I mean, maybe not anymore. Kids are spoiled now, but back in my day, no, it's true. Back in my day, you didn't get in control of anything.
A lot of people won't even have a conceptual idea of what you're talking about.
I know. Well, everybody gets their own iPad, and so there's no such thing as couch commando anymore. But everybody just goes and watches their own content. But yeah, at the time, it was like people were particularly kind when a person was sick in my family. Yeah. So there was a lot of caretaking, I would say. There was caretaking and status, tuning into that. I remember being young and communicating an interest or something that I liked. And my parents weren't like this, but I remember my siblings were so derisive at anything that I liked. If I had a preference for something or I liked it, if it didn't match other people's stuff, I'd get so dogpiled. I remember just learning to not talk about the things that I liked unless they had been vetted by my siblings. And then it was okay to talk about them. But otherwise, it was just like, what? You like that? Oh my gosh. It was like, you were not allowed to be an individual. You're not allowed to like things that other people don't like. You have to be in lockstep. And
there's usually 2 tiers. There's kind of the parental tone or the caretaker tone that's set. And then there's kind of the sibling peer tone that's set too in families. And sometimes there are 2 economies running.
Well, the introverted feeling economy from the parents is like, don't handle your stuff. Don't emotionally process anything. And then from the siblings, it was like, and also you're not allowed to have your own, likes and dislikes and identity outside of, what we've decided is okay and acceptable.
Yeah. I hope as you're listening or watching, you're starting to get a map of your own life, possibly as you're tuning in. We just talked about 2 of these channels, sensing and feeling so far, but like Antonia has struggled. Antonia, you've struggled a lot with self-identity and self-worth and like, who am I? What are my desires? What am I allowed to care about? Like, this has been a struggle, I think, for you because there's this void in your family of allowing that. Yeah. Even your preferences as a child were dogpiled by your siblings. Yeah. So you're like, oh, note to self, I'm not allowed to
don't like anything other people don't like.
Have my own sense of self or preference. Yeah. Yeah. And so you can see how it shaped your experience with your personality type. Like you already have ENTP preferences. And now with this rule set or this terms of engagement in your family, you're already pre-wired to have a hard time with introverted feeling. You grew up in a family that doesn't honor, doesn't see it, doesn't have any rules of engagement around it. Let me ask you this. When introverted feeling, the sense of self and authenticity and your values, when it would show up, what were the rules of engagement? Just get out of it as fast as possible? Was there combativeness around it? Like when you did have to go, that's what I think is interesting. I'd love for you to report too, if you're listening or watching, in your family, if you were forced to go to something feeling based and it wasn't necessarily common like your family, Antonia, well, what happens then?
Yeah, well, it was always extroverted feeling. It's like you don't process anything on your own. You always process things through fights or battles.
So it just was not allowed. Like it just was a void that was like, if you were forced into it.
You could go to your room and cry if you wanted to, but nobody's going to like stop you from doing that. But there was certainly no, it's like there was no holding space for an emotional experience. There was no, it's like we're all basically it was like we're all affecting each other. So you don't get to have your own thing going on. It's like it's got to pour into the family arrangement or not. And there was an awful lot of projection. I'm feeling something, so who's at fault? Right. Who
here is doing this to me?
Who here is making this happen? Right. And, or somebody else isn't feeling well. And it's like, oh, did I do that? Right. There was a lot of owning things that were probably had nothing to do with the family unit. Right.
So projection and introjection were basically the rules. When introverted feeling shows up in this energy field, oh God.
Yeah.
Project or introject. Let's just get this. Like you don't, like there's no like sense of like recognizing it or honoring it or anything like that.
There's no like, oh, she just had a bad day. There was like, oh, there's the thing going on. There's like a whole dynamic explanation around this for sure. Yes. And so that was But again, there was a lot of, my family had much higher caretaking skills than yours did.
Yeah. Well, what about you, listening or watching? Would you say your family around the feeling side of it? What were the rules of engagement you weren't allowed to, unspoken? I have a hypothesis. I'm going to pause it soon. Okay. But I'm curious to see if this maps to your experience too, listening. Let's talk about thinking. And before I jump into the questions and things, let's go ahead and frame thinking.
Okay. So thinking is, the easiest way to see these, and of course I'm paring these down to like, what I think is the substrate, even though it's
oversimplified.
Yeah. I mean, we've done
on
it
purpose.
10 years of podcasts on the intricacies of the cognitive functions. So obviously I'm not talking about every square inch of them, but the easiest way to see thinking is like basically problem solving. That's its point. The point of thinking, the thinking functions is to solve problems. And so you can go towards the processing of it. The introverted attitude of introverted thinking is like sort of preloading and pre-thinking so that you're ready to solve a problem, right? And have sufficient thinking around it and clean thinking. And then extroverted thinking is like application and applied, being in rapport with a problem. Yeah. Not conceptually, but practically.
Yeah.
Putting things on timelines, like actually solving problems in the outside world. So that's kind of, that's the easiest way of seeing it.
Sure. Okay. So we talk about thinking and then we think in terms of rules of engagement. I already mentioned this at the beginning of the show, but let's say it again here. The rules of engagement in my household were combat. It was around, we need to get this thing accomplished or done. It wasn't combative like, let's argue out the best way to think about this and the best belief to have and the best principle to come from. Like, we're not talking about first principles.
Right.
It was about implementation, and it was about how are we going to actually accomplish this thing. So it was very extroverted thinking or effectiveness kind of styled. It was almost like, we're not going to take this personal, right? It's all about the thing. My family didn't insult each other or anything like that, but had we gotten to that level, I don't think we would have cared. Like, it didn't seem like anybody cared or took it personal. It's so weird to be with you as a thinker, and you don't play with me in this combative space in thought. It's such a weird experience. And it's a different thinking style than you have, I understand.
Yeah.
But I'm so trained to be that combative that it's like I had to really work on not being that way with our team, people in our class, like just all sorts of people. Because I think it's just how I unconsciously think about it.
Well, there's also, and this is of course where it's good to know the dominant personality types of a family system in order to understand why there are certain energies running through. But it wasn't just that your family, which is comprised of 3 out of 4 being feeler perceiver types. There wasn't just, and 2 of them being SFPs that are really setting the tone. It wasn't just that there was combat in solving problems in the outside world. It was that there was always a sense of urgency around it. I think that extroverted sensing flavor that got put on top of it was, it's like, we have to solve this as fast as possible. And that was, I think, a bit of a bias in your family. It's like one of the reasons why we have to go into combat is because
we're on the battlefield.
We're in a battlefield. We've got to solve this as fast as humanly possible.
The battle has to be won before nightfall.
That's right. The Huns are at the D8, or
that's actually how it felt. It felt like we were like, before nightfall, something has to be done.
It's like, well, we have to get this buzz done by Thursday. It's like, why? Isn't that Bill Burr, right?
Yeah,
we gotta get this buzz done by Thursday. Why? What's going to happen? But there was like a sense of urgency in your family. And so I think that when there was a battle of ideas, in the introverted thinking space, I suspect that's why they didn't take anything personally, because they weren't really attached to their introverted thinking conclusions. Yeah. It was kind of like, well, don't you think, and then like an assertion, which may or may not be well thought out, right? And it's like, well, no, I don't think that. And then I mean, it's really interesting to be like the lone representative of introverted thinking in your family. Yeah. Because your dad, I love your dad. I love your dad. He's so fun. And I love him in like not an ironic, like I love him and I love battling with him or whatever. No, I like legitimately admire and love your father. And I will say these moments when he's just not expecting my introverted thinking to come out and just like clean slice his conclusions. There's always this moment of where he just like looks at me like the clock is moving and then he just goes, yeah, well, don't you think? And then like the subject just gets changed to something that's not even related. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, you didn't think about that one, did you? But it's like it's not a battle of introverted thinking. It really isn't. That's not, and I would say not because they're bad at it, quote unquote, but because they just don't care. Yep. They just don't. There's no value for introverted thinking in your family.
As I've started caring more, because I've been married to you for over a decade now. No, a decade and a half. We've been together like 15, 16 years.
Way to remember the important dates.
I don't know. See,
how long have we
information.
been together?
Unless I'm being combative, I can't remember data.
You're like, hey, we've been hanging out for a long time now, haven't we?
We've been like a couple years. Have I known you? I don't know. But you've trained me to care more about thoughts and more about like the thinking, like first principle thinking. Like I actually really appreciate the first principle thinking now. I'm like, oh my God, where has this been my whole life? It's just, I'm not very good at it because it's like way, the skill is way down in my personality and I don't spend that much time. I'm deeply uncertain. Yeah. It's my trickster energy, right? That would come out there. But I really appreciate thoughtful conclusions and belief and refining my thoughts. You went through, I think we should do an episode of this at some point. You taught a class at our last profiler training as a bonus day, how to think. And we spent a whole day walking people through their thinking, like their belief system around their introverted thinking. We had a INTP there who went through the process. It was like, oh my gosh, this is life-changing. Like it reframed her mindset on some stuff she was like thinking about her kids and her family. Anyway, the whole point is I really appreciated this because I think you have a really clean way of thinking and I've learned a lot from your approach. It's just still not something that was
it's just not something that anybody in your family would care about.
Yeah. What about yours? So I'm guessing thinking was much more honored in your family.
Yes.
And much more, the terms of engagement were like, we're good on this.
Yeah. The problem solving was definitely something my family thought was their forte. More thinkers than feelers in my family. And then my mom has INFJ preferences. So thinking is her tertiary or 10-year-old function, which means that she wanted to show up and play, right, with her thinking as well. So being smart was really important. It was a lot of being able to understand complicated concepts. Yeah. My dad was a chemistry major and but then had eventually gone into advertising and marketing. And so for him, it was a lot of like trying to figure out how to, there was a lot of talking out ideas and talking out how to solve real world problems. There wasn't huge battles for supremacy of thought, but there was a lot of space to refine thoughts. My brother, who has extroverted thinking, probably was the most battle-oriented around it. But even it was just important to be smart. It's just important to be smart and solve a lot of problems. I would say that the difference between my family and your family, though, is because there was more introverted thinking than extroverted thinking. My family was way more tool-based than yours was. Yeah. Like when you had to solve a problem, you collected the proper tools and you did the proper research and you got your ducks in a row and you really made sure that not in an introverted intuition, measure twice, cut once sort of way, but it was actually more of like I just want this to be precise. I would just like this to be right. Even if I have to redo it later, I just want it to be right. And so there was a lot more, how do I say this? It's almost like elegance in problem solving. Does that make sense? Like not to throw shade to your family. Your family is, they are outrageous with the amount of stuff that they're able to do. Mm-hmm. Like when I look at your family, I'm just like, how a group of people is able to get this much done in such a short amount of time. I mean, they're basically like Amish barn raisers, right? They're just like, hey, we're going to put a building over there. And then all of a sudden it's there. And it's like, I was just here like 2 days ago and there wasn't a building over there.
This is why what's possible in the world, I have a really bad skewed reality when I'm like, hey, we could do this. And everybody's like, no, we can't. It'll take forever. I'm like,
let's just do this.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I know because I've done it before. It doesn't take that long. You just do it.
No, it's not always up to code, but but the building's there. And so your family does things much faster, but my family did things much more precise.
Yeah.
And that was important. It was important to get everything just dialed in just so. So I would say in terms of expectations, the rules of engagement were, it's important to be smart. It's important to be a good problem solver. It's important to get your ducks in a row and really be thoughtful. And it's important to have good tools.
We don't necessarily have to unpack this right now, but the burgeoning idea that I have, or the thought that I want to posit here, because you mentioned dysregulation and regulation earlier, is I think that some of what we might be challenged with in our lives, and I'd love for you to give us your feedback, by the way, on the feeling channel, if it's something you resonate with. Were there terms of engagement in your family around, thinking? Were there terms of engagement around thinking in your family? Like mine was combative. Maybe yours was calm. What was yours? If you're listening or watching right now, how would you articulate your terms of engagement around this?
And I'm glad sorry.
Well, I was going to say the dysregulation. I struggle the most with cognitive dysregulation in my thinking.
Yeah.
As I map this for myself, and we've been doing a lot of work lately in our personal lives, like we're paying attention to our arguments, disagreements with each other people, where I feel depressed or down, or where I'm distressed throughout the day. Like, where does the stress live? And it's 90% of the time in my cognitive channel.
Yeah.
Extroverted thinking, effectiveness. My 10-year-old or tertiary is an ENFP. So at first I'm mapping, okay, probably your 10-year-old's more likely to be dysregulated. But also I'm wondering if this family system that you grew up in and the terms of engagement around certain cognitive functions, it just so happens that the two of mine overlap. But I wonder if there's a separation. I wonder if it's the 10-year-old tertiary is more likely, or if it's the rules of engagement are more likely to find where you're going to be dysregulated because you have no skills or tools.
Yeah. Well, and what's coming up for me is I bet there's a channel that the family hopes the entire family will be regulated on.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, and what I mean by that as an example is I'm pretty sure my family was trying to solve everything through thinking.
Yeah. Mine was through sensing.
Yeah. And so that was like, if we can just solve it with thinking, the assumption was that everything would go to a homeostatic level. And so that's why I would say thinking was probably the most, that was the cornerstone. That's the default.
So ours was sensing default. Yours was thinking default. What was yours in your family if you're listening or watching? What do you think the default setting was? And then what do you think that the family was hoping could be maybe outsourced or done somewhere else? Yours, so yeah.
Well, and this is why my sister, who had ESFJ preferences, was such a black sheep for so long.
Yeah. Right.
Because she wasn't a player in the regulation of the whole family system through thinking. She was more like just kind of, she would probably have done it through feeling or through sensing.
Yeah.
And my family was not biased that way.
Yeah.
And so she always seemed like, I remember there was this unspoken thought that she was just like really emotionally erratic. Right? Like, why is she so emotional? Why is everything so emotional with Tina? And it's like, well, she's not emotional. She's just processing.
She's extroverted, feeling, dominant, driver. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. She's in rapport with people, and she's like doing that thing. And so like really what it was is that she had more emotional acumen and more emotional bandwidth than the rest of us did.
Yeah.
And so we were like, that's weird, as opposed to, oh, that's an honorable thing that we can all learn from. It was like, oh, that's not okay.
Yeah, it wasn't seen as a skill, it was a deficiency in a way.
Because you're supposed to be thinking and solving problems with thinking, not understanding the world through,
and
values.
I don't know who needs to hear this right now, but if you're listening or watching and you grew up in a family that you have a skill set, you're talented on your feeling or your thinking, but it was not honored in your family, you feel like the black sheep, you understand that's not, some of that is just not you. That's just the system you were raised in. And the energies you bring to the world, that's what personality type is so powerful for people. And they realize, oh my gosh, not only was I supposed to be using this, but this is my personality type. I'm supposed to be using this as my superpower.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, your sister would have loved to have had that message, I'm guessing, in the family to say, oh, this is actually the good part about me. This isn't a broken or deficient part.
Yeah.
That's what type helps us understand.
Yeah, I don't have to think of, I'm not neurotic. I'm just, I have more bandwidth for feelings and
what's happening there.
What's happening, with the emotional content.
Yeah.
Like I have more bandwidth than the rest of my family, and it's actually they're the problems, not me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about intuition or the existential channel.
Right. So intuition, overly simplified, it's tuning into what cannot be directly experienced, but can still be hypothesized, or it's the knowing of the unknowable, or the things that we cannot currently measure with instruments, or something that I can't directly engage with my senses.
Patterning.
Yeah, patterning's a big part of it. Imagination, visualization, running simulations, taking leaps of faith, seeing things coming down the road, understanding that things have, cycles that they go through and all of that stuff. And so, it's like it's prediction, it's imagination, it's vision, it's all of that. And there's an introverted version, which is the, sort of processing these directly unknowable things. Yep. Knowable without it being knowable. So processing, it usually means it's internalizing. So or introverting. So it's like running simulations and having a vision and, seeing things from all angles. Whereas the extroverted version is more like initiation and emergence and taking risks based on something that kind of feels like that. I think that's the direction I should be going. Mm-hmm. Coming up with a lot of ideas, possibilities thinking, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So this channel then is tuned to more the abstractions, more the possibilities, what ifs. And I think every family system's got a different relationship to this channel. I can imagine very sensory-based families are not open to it. I think my family, I don't think they're necessarily open or closed to this. They're creatively open. And so that lends itself to being more open here, but I don't know if they're
50-50. 50% were sensors, 50% were intuitive. So it's kind of a 50-50. Yeah. Overwhelmingly introverted intuition though.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. Because the rest of my family I'm the weirdo.
You're
in the family.
More ways than one, my love.
in my family. Yeah. And so my ideas were always welcome growing up. Mm-hmm. But they were always like, what a great idea. All right, now let's go figure out what we're going to do.
Right.
I've got this, we could do this and this and this. And my dad was like, those are great ideas. Now let's go figure out what we're really going to do.
Yeah.
It was very kind, but it was always kind of like but we're living here on Earth. So can we kind of do the real thing now?
Yeah.
So I got the messages my ideas are just too big. They're too grandiose. They're too, maybe I didn't think of them abstract, but I was like, they're for later when I have a bigger, they're for bigger places. They're for a bigger
someday
something. Yeah, it's someday. Yeah, exactly.
It's like these are ideas are for someday.
So the rules of engagement are if they're too big of an idea, just put them on the side burner. You can activate them on your own time or someday when you have more resource or more time available.
Yeah.
But we need the ideas to be more down to earth for implementation. So they weren't rejected, they were just curated.
And it wasn't a place of play for you guys.
No.
Intuition was supposed to be used to envision. I mean, I said this before, a new building, but it's astonishing how much your family literally builds things. But it was introverted intuition is to, I remember your dad was remodeling or actually taking a basement room and turning it into a guest room. Mm-hmm. And he has ISFP preferences, and he was sitting in the center of the currently empty space and kind of just getting a feel for it and sort of envisioning what it was going to look like after he had installed things.
Yeah, he'll put things around the room and see how they look and then move them around and keep looking at it. And
but I mean for things not just, furniture or whatever, but where the wall was going to go.
Yeah.
It was envisioning it, using his introverted feeling and introverted intuition to sort of envision the right place for the wall to go. And it was well, it's such an amazing thing to watch because my dad would have had lasers out and.
Well, your dad did do something similar. He told me a story before he passed away that he has ESTP preferences. He didn't know this, but we know this about him. And when they were supposed to open a new store for this company he's working for, he would go to a town and just drive the streets up and down.
Right.
And he said, I would just tune in and get a sense of where people were moving and how they were crossing streets and where the parts of town people were driving to.
And how they lived and what kind of projects they were doing.
So he would gather all this sensory information and then kind of think about it as he was gathering it, and it would help inform him of where to put the next store in that town so people could find it easier.
Exactly.
Those kinds of things.
Or what kind of loss leads would be a good offer or exactly.
Yeah.
But it was always with a practical application.
Yeah.
My dad wasn't really into intuitive play. But of course, his intuition was inferior, a 3-year-old position. But I noticed that your family uses intuition to assist with practical application.
Yeah.
My family, and there were more intuitives than sensors in my family. My family was a lot more because of the confines of my religious upbringing, we weren't really allowed to use intuition in a what you could say a woo-woo way, right?
Yeah.
Like that was all considered sort of
meditation,
edgy and
that kind of thing, right?
Exactly. And so intuition was in my family because it couldn't be used in a more quote unquote serious way. It had to be playful. That was like everybody's outlet. So my family was a big fantasy and science fiction family. Like we read a lot of science fiction and fantasy. Anytime there was anything that was sci-fi or fantasy, we were like going and seeing the movie, and that was like our primary, like that was there was a lot of intuitive conversations going on about like what the future would hold, and a lot of what do you think is going on with that person. And but it was I think because of my religious context, it was not seen as a guide for life. It was, but like, I always talk about the weed that grows in the concrete jungle of your dominant function. It's like if there's no real good outlet, it's going to find a way. And so in my family, it found a way through entertainment and through conversations and sitting around with coffee and speculating about like what's going on, like what do you think would happen if this happened, or what do you think is going on with these two people and this, what's really happening underneath, or what's the meaning of it all, or whatever. Like we were expected to have outlets for it, or the expectation is that it's okay to have outlets. Just, we're not allowed to we're not allowed to live by this. Yeah. We already have our religion that tells us how to live, but we are allowed to play here. And so I think if the religious component hadn't been there, I'm very curious to see how all of that intuition would have manifested.
Yeah. So in your household, the terms of engagement were, this is relegated to play and non-serious things we kind of do on our own time.
But also not minimized or I wouldn't say that intuition was at all marginalized. I guess marginalized is actually the best word. It was not, even though it was for play, it was not marginalized. It was still serious and important. Yeah. But I think it's because this is how we let off steam. Like this is an important part of who we are. Yeah. And this is how we let off steam. So even though it was relegated mostly to conversations and entertainment, it was taken seriously, if that makes sense.
Yeah. This brings up, maybe another family system. I'm going to hypothesize something for maybe somebody who grew up in a very different family than you or me. So we go to Walt Disney World often with our kids, and I've been there many times. We've talked about it on the show. I can't tell you how many like ISTJ personality type dudes, like a guy that's probably, I don't know he's an ISTJ, but
but he's an ISTJ.
You know what I mean? You just know the guy is an ISTJ.
Okay,
he's
so
probably
he's got cargo shorts on.
Well,
sandals with.
This doesn't mean all ISTJs don't dress like this or look like this.
Let me paint the picture. You've got the sandals with the socks.
Yes.
You've got the cargo pants.
That could be a lot of types though. Even feelers.
Let me paint the picture, Joel. And the shirt that's tucked in that still has like the belt and the clip for the phone. With the Mickey ears.
Or the goofy hat.
That's right. And a Star Wars shirt.
So that's
his favorite character and has been his whole life.
I don't like being that specific because I think that's a little too cartoon. I think it's too one note and it's picking on ISTJs too much.
No.
But I know there's that guy.
There's a profile here. That's the ISTJ that gets described. Sure. That is one flavor of ISTJ. There are plenty of ISTJs there that do not fit.
Okay, that guy.
But that guy, he's screaming it.
That guy that's wearing the goofy hat has rules of engagement around being silly and playful.
Yes.
And possibly being intuitive or having been in your intuition. There's probably context that you're allowed to let that out.
Yeah.
And Disney World, for maybe that person, is a context where that comes out. That would be an example of maybe a family system that I'm sure that guy is not going to work as a counting job or whatever he does for a living, wearing a goofy hat.
Now who's using stereotypes?
On Monday. Maybe he does. I would, but I have different preferences.
An accountant, Joel, really?
I'd be a creative accountant.
I can say he's got sandals with socks and that's a bad thing, but you're going to call him an accountant?
Well, I'm talking about that guy you painted. I'm sure that guy is definitely an accountant.
That guy's an accountant.
I guarantee you he is. But the other ISTJs that aren't like that, they also probably have, I was being hyperbolic and all of that. And I know exactly this person you're talking about in the scene. that's not all ISTJs. I don't want to pick on ISTJs because there's a lot of ISTJs that have a very creative bent and their rules of engagement aren't that way.
And they're not like that guy at all. Right? That's a normalizing ISTJ
exactly.
who was raised in an SJ house
and
he's getting his Disney side on.
The Disney side, that's the whole point I want to bring up. I just want to be very careful because there's so many stereotypes get flung around.
And you know what? Actually, thank you for being
it pisses me off.
Being a good steward of type. I appreciate that. But every once in a while, it's like your brain can't help but go the meme.
I know.
Okay. Anyway.
And I think if it was an ENFP, I'd feel more comfortable because it's my people. But it's ISTJ. I'm like, I'm not your experience.
These are not my people. So
they're not my people. So I want to be careful that I'm not rude or anything like that.
Kind of like when you're in a room with somebody who doesn't speak your language and you just smile a lot at them and you have no animus towards them. So you just do a lot of smiling because you don't speak the same language.
I guess.
You want to be like that with ISTJs. You're like, I just want to smile a lot and let them know I mean no harm.
Anyway, the point is that just like, I think I'm using other examples where you both have intuitive preferences. So I just want to make sure I honor maybe somebody that came from a different family system that didn't, the rules of engagement are very different around intuition for that.
Yeah. And I think when extroverted intuition is represented, like more represented, like maybe an SJ family, it's more represented, but it's a lower preference, like maybe a 10-year-old tertiary or a 3-year-old inferior function. I think you do get a little bit more goofiness.
Yeah.
I don't mean the goofy hat. I mean like kind of like there's like a little bit more playfulness, right? Yeah. And there's a little more like kind of silly, like I think that's where dad jokes come from. Somehow you have fully absorbed the dad joke thing, but I think that's just a rite of passage for you.
Yeah.
But there's like this kind of goofy flavor of extroverted intuition that I think intuition probably is considered playful in their family, but is more marginalized as opposed to my family, which was like, this is how we survive through life. This is our only outlet. I think in families where intuition's a little lower, it can be for fun. It can be for play. It can be for your Disney side or whatever, but it's not something that you're like, make a life decision based on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it in your family? What was the rules of engagement around intuition, whether it's extroverted, introverted intuition? Like, how did your family unspoken, what were the rules around how you were allowed to engage with this? Mm-hmm. So now, Antonia, I want to ask you, we don't have to go too much further into it. Maybe we could even record more episodes on this, but obviously we have our descending order of certainty of our cognitive functions, and we're going to probably become dysregulated in our lower functions, like our 3-year-old or inferior or 10-year-old or tertiary. Would you also say that one of the influences, we've hinted on it, but are you thinking more about this idea that the function or the energies that were kind of like rules of engagement were like either there's a no-go or they're a challenge when they enter our family system, because we all have these rules. Mm-hmm. I really think that's also going to put strain on our ability to regulate because we don't have practice growing up.
Well, right? Sure. Yeah. And I think like I said, I think my family was trying to regulate all of the channels through the thinking channel.
Yeah.
And thinking is a very insufficient tool when it comes to emotional regulation. So my family, we just did what we could to not go there, if at all possible. But when things needed a more deft hand and emotional regulation, we were not good at it, right? And even the extroverted feeling types in my family, I think they were just so distressed by how the thinking types showed up in that space. And again, there was no insistence to do one's own emotional processing. There was no real space for that. Or it wasn't that there wasn't space. It was more like there wasn't any modeling or any guidance or any how-to or,
desire to go there, probably.
I mean, yes, of course, no desire, but even if one did, what does one do when they're in that space?
Get out of there as fast as possible.
Yeah, get GTFO. So I think that's important for me to go back and look at my family history and go, I was really not given any resources on emotional processing.
So thinking was the default.
Yeah.
The thinking channel was like any challenge that would come into your family system. The rules are, let's try to go to thinking first. Mm-hmm. If that doesn't solve it, we'll try something else. But that's probably going to solve 90%. That's the theory or the thinking. Mm-hmm. So, like unconsciously, you're going to go to thinking first. That's like the rule.
Yeah. And so, but I mean, I'm trying to meet you where you were talking about emotional or like not emotional, but like regulation, regulation of the family unit.
Yeah.
And so because that was the default, the thing that is the opposite, the polarity opposite of the default ends up becoming this sort of,
Were your emotions in your family dysregulated all the time in the system? Or you just ignored them enough so that you didn't see it?
Yeah, there was a lot of kick cans, I think.
So delay.
Yeah, and so I wouldn't say that it felt like, there were times in my life where it felt like nothing but fighting was happening.
Yeah.
In times where there was not a lot of resource, like emotional, maybe sometimes financial resource, when we were not well resourced, there was always a ton of fighting.
Well, I think it's almost every family. Or
sure.
At least there's conflict, maybe not fighting, but there's usually tension and conflict that enter when resource is low.
I misspoke. The truth is that there was more psychological resource available and emotional resource or whatever, like energetic. Think about it, energetic as opposed to concrete resource, but there was more energetic resource available when we were poor. And there was less available when my family had a bit of money. And so the time periods where we were fighting the most, weirdly enough, do not coincide with our poorest time period.
Yeah.
Like, I think there was a lot of stress on my dad.
Yeah.
I think his job was incredibly stressful. I think he had absolutely no idea what to do with any of that stress. And again, there was no room for emotional processing. So it's not like, oh, I'll go work out, or I'll go do this, I'll go figure this out. I'll let off some steam someplace else. There was just grit it and push through. And if it came out in these kind of terrible ways every once in a while, well, I guess we just eat that. And so, to your point, when you're looking at it, the family system in terms of regulation, understanding that my family defaulted to thinking very much shines light on why the feeling regulation aspect was always, strained,
ignored, and delayed. I think delay is so that's the strategy of your family. Then is the rule of engagement is when you're forced to confront this energy, which is feeling. Our rule of engagement is we're going to kick the can and delay as long as we can.
You either explode or you kick the can.
Those are your two options, two rules.
And explosion obviously is, kicking the can would be the more, that's the thing we want to do.
Yeah.
But if for some reason we just can't anymore, then I guess explosion is the default.
I have really low conflict in my family. Like, I don't think I've ever seen my parents have a direct fight in front of me, ever.
Amazing.
Like a little bit of an argument or a tiff, like where they kind of like had a disagreement, but I've never seen either of them yell at each other or raise their voice at each other.
Amazing.
Ever. My entire, not even behind closed doors, like hearing them behind the closed doors doing that. Ever. And it's not like they don't connect or anything. And I think, I'm sitting here going, why is that the case? I think they're mature people, but also there's got to be something else going on because everybody's, I know they have conflict. They have disagreements. I know that. I know I've been privy to them, but I've just never experienced it in like the fighting way.
Blow up.
They were really careful about that as kids to take that probably offline somewhere. So I never saw it. But even I couldn't you couldn't, as a kid, you pick up on stuff. I didn't perceive it. I really want to say, I think the reason is because we were so sensory focused. Mm-hmm. Like in some ways, I almost see these as a stack of health. And my family was so focused on getting into action and doing physical things that it handled 80% of the stresses and the tensions and the fights that would have happened otherwise. I'm realizing that in my life too now, when I've got a lot of conflict and a lot of challenge, if I just go and do stuff and get into action, now maybe that's because I was raised that way, but I just noticed it clears out a lot of the distress I have. So the default to regulate on the sensory channel, first, isn't my instinct because I'm not wired that way. But when I go and get sensorily regulated first, everything else just seems to follow almost automatically without me having to do much else.
It's not your instinct, but it's your training.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, Piper, who has ESFP preferences, her daughter, who's 13 now, one of my favorite things that she says all the time is it's not that deep.
Yeah.
Which is such great wisdom from her, actually, because the truth is that we overcomplicate everything and we know it.
We over-pattern everything we engage
everything,
with.
Everything. It's kind of, we need a little ESFP to reflect back to us how kind of out of control it gets sometimes.
Up our own.
Yeah, we're totally up our own ass a lot of times. And so when she's like, listen, it's just not that deep, I think that's the other thing that helps it be less, in my family, everything was given so much weight.
Don't give it so much meaning. Right? Yeah, that was my family's engagement. Why does that mean so much? Don't mean so much with it.
And in my family, everything meant so much.
Yes.
Right? So thinking was the first channel, but intuition was the second channel.
Yeah.
And so again, I go back to my poor ESFJ sister who was sort of at her depth. And I don't mean that intellectually. I mean in terms of expectations of how she's going to navigate life, right? And what her tool set is going to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's if it can't be problem solved with thinking, then let's figure out the meaning with intuition. And so everything had a lot of weight to it. And I think for your family, it was sensing first and then feeling second, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so for you, it was like, don't overcomplicate things, don't apply meaning that doesn't need to be applied, and then, and then hold space for each other's experiences.
Yeah. Stay in action.
Yeah.
Hold space. So I think that's really interesting. If you're listening or watching right now, can you get a composite map? Maybe try to paint a picture of the situation you grew up in. Maybe it changed too through your life. So you could maybe have 2 or 3 different versions of this. But what would you say the snapshot of your family system was around these 4 channels? So we got sensing, feeling, thinking, intuition. Obviously, those split into extroverted, introverted attitudes on the channels. But just take the channel itself. Where would you say your family's default setting was? Like, what was the one that was always welcome? That's kind of where we all wanted to go to, whether that was your preferences or not, personality-wise. What was your family's requirement of you? Which one was the place you went to for play? Which one did you avoid, or when it came about, you had a strategy to deal with it? Like some people have really challenging strategies. Other people kick the can or delay or blow, like your family had that for feeling, Antonia.
Yeah, when you say strategy to deal with it, you don't mean like in a healthy, appropriate way.
Not a healthy strategy. I mean, what was the default? What was the emergent? Let's talk about emergence now.
No, because you're not interested in emergence.
What was the emergent strategy that your family found itself in?
Yeah, what did they trip over? And they're just like, I guess this is what we're doing.
Right? Like, I mean, I'm just imagining an entire family of nothing but sensors, high sensing. Mm-hmm. You're forced to do intuition from time to time. So what do you do? How did your family deal with that when it came about? Yeah. Maybe your family's high thinking, like Antonia's was. Not high and thinking.
Ooh, it would have been a better experience had we all been high.
Your thinking is way up there. You're a smart family that likes to think and problem solve.
You know what's interesting?
What do you do when feelings get injected?
My family was so thinking. I'm not considered the smart one in my family.
Wow.
I'm not that it's like, not that I mean, you don't need to say wow. That's a very, thank you for saying wow. But no, seriously, I'm not, I was considered a runt.
Wow.
Yeah, a little bit of an intellectual runt.
I'm saying wow because I actually don't give a crap about any of that.
I know you don't care.
I could care less. I've never taken an IQ test in my life. It doesn't even matter. Like, I don't know. Why does it matter to anybody? I don't care.
While you're with me, I don't understand.
It doesn't, because it's like pointless.
I'm like, hey, I do a thing. And you're like, yeah, I don't care about that. And I'm like, wait, what? Why haven't you been together for anywhere between 10 to 15 years? Who knows what it actually is? It's somewhere around there, right? Maybe
you grew up in a feeling family and your default was feeling.
You don't remember that? Mine. You said it like an hour ago.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't remember that actually.
That you didn't remember how long we'd been together?
Oh, I do. Anywhere. Yes. Oh, I messed that up. Yes, that's what you're talking about. Yes, I totally messed up the number.
Never mind. It was referential humor. You didn't get it. Are we good?
Well, I was going to say, if you came from a feeling family, I'm just kind of walking down through these channels. If you came from a feeling family, you're confronted with thinking. How did your family deal with that? Was the pushback? Did you have a emergent strategy you dealt with it, or sensing, but you had intuition, or you're an intuitive family? This is another thing. And you have sensing that comes up. How did you deal with that?
That's a good question.
These are challenges for all family systems, I would say.
I think those are good questions, but I do think that I like your original premise, which is like, what were the expectations? Mm-hmm. I think that's even more, I mean, it's easy. I think it's easier to go, oh, these were the dominant energies in my family. Oh, no wonder, ... No wonder we didn't do this other thing well. I think that's an easier thing to mine out. I think the harder one is like, ooh, what were the expectations of my family? And what did that tell me? What did that train me into? Yeah. For me, like I said, and I know we just made light of it, but it's like being raised in a family where I wasn't considered that smart forced me to have to be more thoughtful. Yeah. Because it was like, well, you're not coming. I mean, of course, I was the youngest in the family. I was the youngest in a girl. So it wasn't like I was, anybody had high expectations for me. But it meant that I couldn't get away with anything. So I was really forced to do a lot of due diligence around thinking. Yeah. And if I wasn't, then I couldn't sit at the table, right? And I couldn't join the conversation. And so it probably trained me to be more thoughtful, which of course eventually led to me leaving my religion, which eventually led to me no longer really being a part of my family system, interestingly enough. Yeah. But
it trained you out of their own system.
Yeah, kind of in some ways. Through their values, through their expectations, through the unspoken things. And so, I mean, that's not the whole story, but it is very interesting to see how these things influence our choices and our relationship to our own functions and how we try to regulate ourselves through all of this. I think it's a thought exercise that deserves a little bit of time.
Yeah. So why are we talking about this? The point is that as you start to map not just your personality type. We've talked about that a lot here at Personality Hacker. We want you to understand how your cognition is wired, the 4 parts of your mind that you can observe and work with. Some of them are more certain, some of them are less certain, but they all show up for you. And your preferences and the way you work with these energies determine your best fit personality type and how you're going to move through the world. You can make your life tailored for how you're wired, But another factor of this isn't just your profile of your personality. It's the situation you grew up in. It's the profile of where you came from. And you'd mentioned this, Antonia, you're doing a lot of work with our profiler training students around timelines right now to look at the etymology of your personality type is one snapshot, but all of that factors in of what parts of your personality you were able to express, what parts of your personality were supposed to be hidden away, which parts were unacceptable to bring to your family system, which parts were honored and pushed forward, which parts were asked to be hidden away and blocked from existence or just not brought out. All of that matters for how you will navigate your life going forward. So I think it's important to tune in. If you look at your family system and you can kind of get a composite map, you can probably get a sense of why you're showing up the way you're showing up in your personality. If you'd like a great place to start with all of this, it's going over to our website, personalityhacker.com, and look at our owner's manuals for all of the 16 personality types in the Myers-Briggs system. We've got one for your personality type. If you don't know your type, we've got an assessment, an online quiz to understand how you're wired, to get one of these owner's manuals to then move into setting up your life ergonomically tailored for how you are actually wired to move through the world, to honor your preferences, to honor your wiring, and also help you mitigate some of the challenges that come from some of the parts of you you're more uncertain about. So incredible tools for you to get started over at those owner's manuals. And we would love to hear this conversation expand underneath this podcast, whatever platform you're on. Also, we'd love to invite you to come over to Substack. We've got a newsletter running there. We're going to be writing there more regularly. And we'd love for you to subscribe there because we're going to share some more ideas around dysregulation on that channel specifically. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
And we'll talk with you on the next Personality Hacker Podcast.